Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to shrink ourselves down to explore a hidden empire that spans the entire globe, a civilization so successful it literally outlasted the dinosaurs. Yep, we're talking about ants. And this idea right here, it's the key to everything. It's how a tiny insect, pretty much powerless on its own, managed to build a global empire that has been thriving for over 160 million years. You see, their secret isn't about individual strength. It's about the incredible power of the collective. So, to start this journey, let's zoom way in, right down to the individual ant. Except what you find is that an ant isn't really an individual at all. It's more like a tiny, specialized biological part of something much, much bigger. Ants are absolute masters of the system called eusociality. Think of it this way: the colony, not the single ant, is the real organism. It's a superorganism, where each ant is like a single cell in a body, just doing one specific job for the good of the whole. And inside this superorganism, the work is divided up into these strict roles, or castes. You've got the queen at the top. She's basically an egg-laying machine that can live for decades. Then there are the males. Their only job is to mate, and they live for just a few weeks tops. But the huge majority? They're all sterile female workers and soldiers who give up their own ability to reproduce to do everything else, finding food, raising the young, building the nest, and fighting to the death to defend it. But here's where it gets really wild. This division of labor, it's not written in their DNA. Genetically, a worker and a queen are identical sisters. Their entire destiny is decided after they're born, based on what they're fed as larvae. Get a protein-rich diet, you become a queen. Get the standard stuff, you become a worker. It's all nurture over nature. Okay, so you've got millions of these little specialists running around. How on earth do they coordinate all these complex jobs without a boss or a central command center? Well, the answer lies in a silent, invisible language. The entire colony runs on a super sophisticated operating system made of chemicals called pheromones. It's like a chemical grammar. A forager finds food, she lays down a chemical trail. Others follow it, and if they find the food, they lay down more chemicals, reinforcing that same trail. It's this brilliant, decentralized system, a feedback loop that lets thousands of ants vote on the best path to food, with no leader needed at all.
And this language is incredibly subtle. An alarm signal, for instance, is a really light, volatile chemical that spreads through the air almost instantly, basically screaming danger to everyone nearby. But a food trail, that's a heavier, more stable chemical laid on the ground, acting like a long-lasting map. Different chemical words for totally different meanings.
But it's not just chemicals. They use vibrations, sending messages through the ground. They use touch, tapping their antenna to share really complex information. They even share info by passing liquid food from mouth to mouth, which is a great way to pass chemical updates through the whole colony. And maybe most important of all, each colony has its own unique body odor, a kind of chemical passport that lets them instantly tell who's a friend and who's an enemy. So once you have this incredible communication network up and running, the colony really starts to act like a single massive entity, a thinking, breathing, living city. And right at the heart of this city, you have the queen. Now, the common myth is that she's a ruler, barking out orders, but the reality is she gives no commands whatsoever. She's a biological engine pumping out thousands of eggs, and her pheromones are the chemical heartbeat of the colony, signaling that she's healthy and keeping everyone together. If she dies, that heartbeat stops and the whole colony just slowly falls apart. And the life of this superorganism starts with this amazing, dramatic event called the nuptial flight, where thousands of virgin queens and males all fly into the sky to mate. Afterwards, the newly fertilized queen lands, literally breaks off her own wings since they're useless now, and seals herself inside a tiny chamber. She won't eat for weeks. Instead, she survives by metabolizing her own powerful flight muscles to lay and feed her very first brood of workers. Once they're born, they take over all the work, and just like that, a new city is born. Okay, so once these living cities are up and running, they start to interact with the world and with each other. And on this global stage, we see ant societies develop systems that look surprisingly familiar, things like economies, alliances, and a state of constant planet-spanning warfare. Get this, millions of years before humans ever figured it out, ants mastered agriculture. Leafcutter ants, for example, grow these huge underground fungus gardens. Other species actually practice animal husbandry. They herd aphids like cattle, protecting them from predators, and then milking them for a sugary liquid called honeydew. They even take the aphid eggs into their own nests to keep them safe during the winter. But when it comes to interacting with other ant colonies, well, things are a lot less peaceful. You could say ant politics are pretty simple. It's total war. And this has led to one of the longest and deadliest conflicts in the entire history of our planet. On one side of this war, the army ant. These guys don't even build permanent nests. They are the nest, a nomadic, predatory swarm of millions that just flows across the forest floor like a river of death, eating up to 500,000 animals every single day. And often, standing in their path, is the leafcutter ant. These ants are a civilization all on their own, living in these huge underground cities with millions of citizens. And they represent one of the very few forces on Earth that can actually put up a fight against the swarm. When these two armies meet, the battlefield is just absolute chaos. The army ants pour forward in a relentless column of hundreds of thousands. In response, the leafcutters send out their super soldiers, these massive ants, some 100 times bigger than a normal worker. They form a living wall, a meter-deep meat grinder of crushing jaws and pure carnage. And while these soldiers are fighting and dying by the thousands on the front lines, workers are frantically trying to barricade the nest entrances behind them in a desperate last stand to save the next generation. It is warfare on a scale that is just impossible to imagine. All this organization and conflict, it really hints at something much bigger. So, for our final section, let's pull the camera all the way back to a planetary scale, just to understand the true mind-blowing dominance of these tiny creatures. 10 quadrillion. That's the best guess for how many individual ants are alive on Earth right now. That's a 10 with 15 zeros after it. Just let that sink in. But it's not just their sheer number, it's their weight, their biomass. If you could somehow put all the land animals on a giant scale, ants alone would make up a staggering 20% of the total weight. To put that in perspective, all 8 billion of us humans, we make up just 2%. They outweigh us 10 to 1. And for over 160 million years, they have been the silent engineers of our world, shaping the soil, spreading seeds, and fundamentally changing every ecosystem they touch. So they're not just some pests in your kitchen. They are an ancient, globe-spanning civilization that's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. They've mastered sustainable agriculture, decentralized logistics, and collective action on a scale we can barely even comprehend. Which, of course, leaves us with one final question to think about. What can we learn from the true masters of the planet?